Interest only or repayment mortgages? What's it all about and which one should you choose? In this video, I'm going to unpack the difference between interest only mortgages and repayment mortgages and tell you how I personally feel about it. Everybody is different and everybody's personal experiences are different and their circumstances, which is something I must highlight, and therefore you need to make the decision that is right for you. Initially, you always hear about doing interest-only mortgages when you're investing in property, and this is something that I set out to do. As I run the properties as short-term lets, Airbnb as most people know it, the cash flow is greater. So as I went through the journey, I started to think to myself, I would be better off repaying the mortgages down through the increased cash flow and then having less money out of the properties, but ultimately getting the mortgages away. That mindset then changed again back to interest only because the debt is cheap, okay? It's probably the lowest cost borrowing that you're gonna get, and it is cheap. House prices are always going up. So even if you hold the house for 20, 25 years, you're more than likely going to be able to sell it and pay off the mortgage if need be later on in life, or you will be able to refinance it and more than likely extend the mortgages. Again, depends on your age and depends on your business circumstances as to what you can do on that front. But the debt is cheap. So what I did was I analysed, okay, well, if I repay it off, rather than use the extra cash flow to buy more units, which one is the best for me? So for me, it worked out that interest only, using my Airbnb strategy and using the extra money rather than paying it off the mortgage, actually using that to build a pot to get more units was more favorable for me over the long term and even in the short term, to be fair. So that is now how I approach the subject. Now, just to explain what it actually is in case you don't know, an interest-only mortgage is basically you borrow £100,000 from a mortgage company and you pay your monthly payment, and every single month that payment is just the interest payment. So let's assume you're paying a 4% interest rate, then the 4% you will be paying every single month. At the end of the agreement, you still owe £100,000. There's nothing wiped off the actual principal debt. On a repayment mortgage, it's different. So your monthly payment will be higher, and each of the monthly payment goes to serve the interest part and also the repayment part. So that £100,000 starts to chip away over the years. If you take a 25, 30-year term, which is the typical average these days, out by the time you've paid that for 25 years, you will owe zero, and then you'll fully own the property. This can be more favorable to people who are maybe a bit older or maybe a bit risk averse and they don't like the idea of having debt around the neck for a long period of time and they want to pay it off. But as an investor, looking at the numbers, calculating the data, making non-emotional decisions, which I talk about all the time, we should just be basing our decisions based on the spreadsheet numbers. For me and my circumstances and the way I run my businesses, it makes more financial sense for me to go interest only and then use the additional cash flow to get more assets, which create more cash flow, and ultimately the grand scheme of things is I end up with more cash flow to be able to service the debts and ultimately pay them off if I want in the long term. So I have a mixture at the minute. When I hit my remortgage phase, I will more than likely switch the ones that I did have on repayment to interest only, and then I can use that cash flow to fund more projects and ultimately grow bigger, quicker, faster, which is my ultimate goal. Again, that might not be your goal. Your goal might be slow and steady, and you might therefore prefer the remortgage option because you're paying the debt down and you don't need as much cash flow. Similarly, if you're in a position where you need cash flow right now and that's the main driver, then you might want to look at an interest-only mortgage for the first period, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, whatever that looks like. And you might want to use that cash flow to build up your safety net, get you potentially out of a job or however you're looking to invest. And then you can start making different decisions based on where you're at the time. In terms of the mortgage length, I have recently switched to 5 years, and I was at 2 years at the beginning. So at my journey, you want that flexibility. You just want to make sure that, you're going to be comfortable. I went to 2 years. I would recommend a 5 or possibly even a 10-year term now. Mortgage interest rates are at their lowest. There is only going to go one way, and that's up. Now, as and when that happens or how quick that happens, I don't think we're going to see a sharp rise. However, you just never know what's around the corner, as we've recently found out in the last few years. So for me, it's 5-year term now, where all my remortgages and current mortgages that I'm taking out are 5 years, and I just get that locked in, get that fixed, and then I can just deal with it in 5 years' time, knowing that we're protected against any more hikes. It also means that you're paying less broker fees. Obviously, if you're renewing every 2 years, you're paying more fees, you're paying more, lender setup fees. There's all sorts of fees included in these things. If you're going to switch to a different lender, you potentially need to get a new solicitor on board. So I'm just trying to minimize the costs, protect the asset in terms of, protect my cash flow, more importantly, in terms of a longer fixed period of time. And then ultimately we'll see what the landscape looks like in 5 years' time, and see where we're at there. So that for me is interest only versus remortgages, and hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, drop some comments in the video and I'll be happy to answer any questions. And as always, don't forget to subscribe and head over to my website www.ryankluke.com and check out what's available over there. Have an awesome day.